All right, let's jump right into it. This is an occupational overview of the electrical industry, Module 1. This is section 1 of 3, and in this one we'll be identifying sectors and career options in the electrical industry. Now, there are 3 sectors and several trade options in the electrical industry. The 3 sectors we'll be discussing in this module are the residential, commercial, and industrial wiring systems, and the typical components involved in those. And we'll be going over a few career paths, a few opportunities that can be taken advantage of by a well-trained electrician. All right, the 3 main categories of electrical industry. That's in order of complexity and regulation from least to greatest would be residential, commercial, and industrial. Now, residential is a good place to start to be able to learn the basics of wiring systems and how they all work together. It only gets more complex from there as you go toward commercial and even industrial settings. So some of the components in a residential electrical system, you obviously have a power supply, um, that's electrical service, a non-metallic sheath cable, nail-on device boxes, panel boards, and fixtures. Now, that's what's listed here in this slide, but there are also other components that may not include non-metallic sheath cable. For example, in Chicago and Gary, Indiana, the code for those cities require EMT, which is electrical metal conduit. Non-metallic sheath cable would be used in lieu of a conduit system. In the pictures on the right of this slide here, you can see some of those nail-on device boxes. This non-metallic sheath cable featured in picture labeled D is that yellow wire going through the studs and coming out of this nailed-on box here, the gray box here. Well, that in Chicago is illegal to use in that manner, as well as Gary, Indiana, from what I understand. They have, as electricians, we go by a national electrical code, the NEC. We'll get into that a little later. Well, they have standards, and those standards require a minimum level of safety. Well, local governments and institutions can enact their own minimal standards as long as they're not below the NECs. So, Chicago and example Gary, Indiana, they increased those standards, and the non-metallic sheath cable featured here is below those standards that they raised. This here, you've probably seen this. This is an example of a transformer. It's a pad-mounted transformer, and the electric that's running to it and from it is ran underground through the grass coming up through this concrete pad that it rests on. There's another example of a transformer. They look like cans. They're on a power line, and they look like kind of like a cylinder garbage can hanging from a power line. Those are also transformers similar to these. These are deemed safer because the power lines can't be obstructed by wind or common weather conditions. Um, this is what we'll be calling a panel. You'll usually, people would refer to this as maybe a breaker box or a circuit breaker box or something like that. In the industry, we call this a panel. It can be used as well as a sub panel. We'll get into that a little bit later. And this would be called a luminaire or a light fixture. We don't call these lights in the industry. We call these luminaires or light fixtures. Calling something a light is kind of a broad description because you can be referring to the bulb or the fixture that's housing the bulb, or any portion of the bulb or the fixture when you're referring to a light. So we get a little bit more specific in the industry and we refer the actual device that's powering the bulb a light fixture or a luminaire. Let's move on to commercial. In the commercial installations, there are a lot of the same elements as residential installations, but these installations are a little bit more elaborate. If we compare some of the images from the previous slide, you can see how some of these same elements grow when they make it to the residential. When they make it from the residential to the commercial sectors. The commercial sectors are basically anywhere you have to dress business casual and conduct yourself as if you're in public. That's probably a commercial sector. Anywhere the public is allowed to roam freely, that's probably a commercial sector. Let's compare some of these images, huh? First, let's go to this transformer. This is a residential transformer. You'll probably see it on the corner of your average neighborhood, right? And this is a commercial transformer. As you can see, this door is about 5 feet tall, maybe a little bit higher, 6. This one here is about 3 feet on the pad, maybe. Let's go to the electrical service here. Starting in residential, you'll see this on the back of your house all the time. We call it a meter can. This is electrical service powering your panel here. And let's go to the commercial electrical service. Now you have several meter cans there. Here, 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 here. You also have several disconnects. These all are safety switches to disconnect the power, the main power supply on the inside. One for every meter can. Let's check this out. You go from Romex non-metallic sheath cable, that is your raceway or a path for electricity to travel from source to component. And you grow from there into this conduit system, which is what I was mentioning before, which is a standard for Chicago and Gary, Indiana's electrical systems. This here looks like it is EMT. Yeah, it looks like this is EMT. There's different types of conduit. You have EMT, which is considered thin wall. You also have IMC, which is intermediate level conduit. And then you have rigid, which is we consider heavy wall, which is the big stuff. This is a nice complex raceway system in the commercial setting. Another way that the complexity grows in the commercial industry is the commercial setting in the electrical industry is fire alarm systems. The fire alarm systems can be very elaborate. Fire alarm and security, they can get very elaborate in commercial settings. We have multiple types of fire alarm systems that can be installed in a commercial setting. We'll get into that a little later as well in the class. Office lighting and outdoor lighting. Now, if you go back to our luminaire here, you have indoor and outdoor lighting in the residential setting, but it kind of, as I said before, grows and gets more elaborate in the industrial setting. You really have parking lot lighting in a residential setting. It has to be a pretty nice house. But in an industrial setting, it's extremely common. Office lighting can get elaborate, as residential lighting can as well. But it's far more common in a commercial setting to see an elaborate lighting layout. You here in this layout, we have a few different types of lighting that can be available. We have can lights here. You can see that in the ceiling. A couple of can lights there and there and there and there. And then we have track lighting here. Going across this rail here, powered by the rail. And it looks as though we might have some sconce lights over here on the wall, but I'm not quite sure what that might be. That could be a different decoration. Accent lighting as well is very common in office settings. And it's usually only used in elaborate residential settings. Let's move on to industrial. After we've compared those two pretty thoroughly. Industrial electricians, they split into two groups, installers and maintenance. We call the installers, they're doing capital work. And the maintenance guys, they usually do T&M, which is time and material. Well, this has been my particular lane as far as the type of electrical work that I've been doing in most of my career. I've touched on all of it quite a bit, but I spent the most time in industrial. In industrial, as I said before, they require rigid metallic conduit, which is the heaviest of the options we have for raceway. Instead of your common transformer here, you'll probably have a complete distribution system, complete with switch gear here, its own transformer system, and generally its own dedicated power supplies. It's really, 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 really big stuff, big dangerous stuff. The highest voltages we work with are in industrial setting. These are, when you're an example, going back to a commercial setting, let's go revisit these switches, huh? These will be the disconnects available to turn off the power in a commercial setting. And in an industrial setting, we grow to something like this. Oh yeah, that's some switches. Each one of those power a particular unit, a particular device or machine, or even a sector of a building, sometimes just a room. They control sometimes each motor is supposed to actually have its own means of disconnect. Every motor that you have has its own individual means of disconnect. So in this particular example, it seems as though all of these switches, well, at least the majority of them, power a motor of some sort. But in industrial, it gets pretty heavy. These electricians, as said in the slide, install conduit systems, conductors, motors, and equipment. And the maintenance electricians obviously maintain these motors and equipment. So for minimum failure and minimum incidents, it's generally all about safety. Career paths. Skilled electricians are in high demand. They are in extreme high demand currently in 2025. Quite a bit of data centers and battery plants and solar fields going up right now. So it is a nice time to be alive if you're an electrician. On the job learning provides an opportunity as you learn. I came up through the apprenticeship, as you might know, in IBEW, and it provides a tremendous on-the-job learning opportunity. The trainees begin by installing residential wiring. Our first and second year apprentices do residential. I may have mentioned it before, but it is the least complex category of electrical that you can get involved with. So it's a really good starting point for our apprentices. In commercial, the commercial electricians, they install electrical components and devices and all kinds of installations in apartment buildings and stores. Like I said before, anywhere you have to dress business casual, any public setting is generally a commercial building. These buildings generally have metal framed construction as opposed to the wood that you would generally see in residential. There's a different element of safety that's necessary when dealing with these. They can have sharp edges when you're working with them or pulling through them. They may or may not require as much drilling to get a raceway through it because they come with pre-manufactured holes. Depending on how they line up, how the carpenters install them, you will still have to drill through them, but just maybe not as often. Industrial electricians, they require additional training, mainly safety training. Generally, if you're going into an industrial setting, there is a sector of your day, or sometimes a day or multiple days, dedicated specifically to additional training in regards to safety of that particular location. Every company, every business, industrial business, has their own rules that they follow, and they're all extremely strict. So that additional training is absolutely necessary. They also should be familiar with three-phase motors, motor control systems, and hopefully some instrumentation. Not all electricians are created equal. So there are some people who specialize in instrumentation, such as myself. There's such people who specialize in motors and motor controls as well. In an industrial setting, a lot of electricians, they also work in hazardous locations. Hazardous is a broad term. It can refer to anything that can cause you physical harm. Physical, mental, or emotional harm, actually. But physical harm is the most, is the one that we try to prevent more than any other. Honestly, is the easiest to try to avoid and prevent, easiest to detect as well. Moving forward, we got our electrical maintenance technician. In the previous few slides, what we got? One, two. The previous 3 slides, we mentioned installations. Those were guys that were installing motors and motor control systems. These maintenance guys and I spent several years as a maintenance electrician in an industrial setting. I can tell you that this device here is extremely common in those settings. They typically are employed by large facilities to service and maintain electrical equipment and instruments. And what you want to do as a maintenance electrician is you want to familiar yourself with an electric motor starter. That's what you want to do. These things have to be maintained. They have moving parts. They have to be cleaned every so often. They have to be switched out every so often. Components burn up on these things all the time. They have to be replaced. Components have to be replaced every so often. You definitely want to familiar yourself with equipment like this. To wrap things up, let's get some terms down. An electrical service. That that if you didn't get it before, feel free to rewind this video. But we first visited an electrical service in a residential slide, and that is components that are used to connect to the serving utility to the premises wiring system. We can go revisit that real quick if you like. This is the service that term was referring to. Up this pipe from this underground feed coming from this transformer. It comes up from underground into this meter can, which determines how much to charge you this month for the electricity you used. Goes right into here and into your home. Into your home, the first stop that it makes is right here at this panel. And that will be the main feed, and from that panel, it'll go everywhere into your house to all of the outlets and all of the lights and switches through the waste. And how does it get to those lights and switches and outlets? Through the raceway system. Raceway system is enclosures that house the conductors in the electrical system, such as fittings, boxes, and conduit. We learned about conduit, right? The rough end. The rough end is the beginning stage of the wiring that involves the installation of the panel board, raceway system, and wiring boxes. The images contained in the residential slide 6, that is all rough end. Everything when you see the wood studs, that's generally the rough end portion of the installation. Now, the trim out portion of the installation would be the opposite of the rough end. It will be not the beginning, but the final stage of the wiring. Now, this involves installation or termination of devices and fixtures. That's when you're actually installing your outlets into the wall and putting the cute covers on it and making sure the screw heads are all turned the same way, making sure everything's level and cute and nice. It usually happens after the drywall is installed and everything is painted. We usually go in after that's done and do the trim out, the final stage of the installation. A substation. A substation. It's an enclosed assembly of high voltage equipment, very dangerous, including switches, circuit breakers, buses, and transformers. You probably don't know what a bus is. It is not a mode of transportation. Uh, these things connect the power generation facility to the grid through which electrical energy is passed in order to change its characteristics. Characteristics such as voltage, stepping up or down, characteristics such as frequency, or any other characteristics. We'll get into that a little bit later. But a substation, that's those, you've seen those before. They're gated, generally chain link fence, have a whole lot of metal, big metal structures inside. Looks like it'll cause cancer if you get too close to it. They're generally humming, probably. Those are substations. Real quick, let's get into these questions. Determination of devices and fixtures is completed during the construction phase known as what? We just went over that. Which one is it? The beginning, the end, the final, the clean up, the trim out, the roughing? I don't know. Which one is it? It is the trim out. That's when everything is painted. After the drywall is in, we come in and make things look pretty. Put in the devices and all of the little covers, all of the decorative stuff. Hang the ceiling fans and things. That's the trim out. Which of the following is true with regard to commercial electrical work? What is it? Wiring is rarely installed in raceways. Most wiring is installed in classified or hazardous locations. Did we go over there? Did I say that? I don't know if I said that. You tell me. Fire alarm systems are commonly required. Is that the commercial electrical work they're talking about? It is exactly the same as residential work. Maybe they just use a different name because commercial is cuter. We'll find out. You tell me. Can you tell me before I tell you the answer? Which one is it? See? The fire alarm systems are commonly required. Yes, you want people to stay safe. That's where you get the sprinkler systems and stuff in the commercial settings. We all seen those go off in the movies. Just so you know, it's nothing like the movies. Those fire alarm systems, when those sprinklers go off, the water that comes out of there is disgusting. It stinks. It's black. It's not clear. It's a horrible experience for everyone that touches it. In industrial facilities, the electrical systems are most likely maintained by what? The local utility. Does NIPSCO come out there and maintain your industrial electrical facility? Senior management. Senior management. Do they call out the old folks home and get the seniors out here to manage your electrical facility? External electrical contractors. Ooh, that might be a thing. You don't know. I don't know. On-site maintenance personnel. I think I got which one it is. I don't know. I got an idea. Do you? Let's see if we're thinking the same thing. Oh, great minds think alike. I knew you picked the right one. I bet you picked the right one. I'm going to assume you picked the right one. Keep hope alive. Employers of commercial electricians are often electrical contractors who work as subcontractors. For what? General contractors, standards organizations, larger electrical contractors, or architects. Now, see, this one is kind of tricky because technically it can be a couple of those. But the right answer is general contractors because a general contractor will hire a subcontractor, and that subcontractor will generally specialize in a particular trade, such as electrical or plumbing or uh, any of the other trades below electrical. I'm an electrician. Yeah, they're all below electrical. So yeah, the right answer is C. It's general contractor. And that's it. The next section is next up for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a lot. Let's move on.